I like that. And I do think that, like, this was something, the price point thing was something that we talked about basically after we started. We're like, once we planned it, we're just scoping out the ones we're going to test. And us, we're picking out these sunscreen. We're like, holy crap, what happened to sunscreen pricing? Cool. So that's that. This year we have new babies in our life. So we have a new category of sunscreen, and that is baby sunscreens.
Yeah.
Okay, this one gave me a lot of existential crazy. My baby is currently only 3 months old, so she shouldn't be wearing sunscreen. And to be honest, like any baby you have, like you should prioritize physical shade over relying on sunscreen. So just put that out there.
Physical clothing.
Yes, exactly. And for me, when I was testing the sunscreen on myself for future use for my baby, I started getting a lot of existential questions of, well, I don't like it, but what do I value as a mom? And it gets a little weird because if you're evaluating for yourself, all of them are like kind of garbage. Like,
100%.
Yeah,
those textures
are not pretty.
They're literally everything that people hate about sunscreens. White cast, gunky, it's not a clean finish. It's a paste.
Yeah, basically. it's the worst. So for me, I took them all out on runs and tried to torture test them because ultimately I was like, well, they should be they are all water resistant, and the most important thing to me is the robustness of the film, right? Like you don't want your babies rubbing around. My babies get surprisingly sweaty. That is something I didn't think about before having a baby. So to me, I was like, okay, that's like test number 1. And then looking at the white cast, I'm like, I didn't think having a white casted baby would bother me that much, but my baby popped out kind of tan. And surprisingly, I'm like, I don't want you to look super clowny. So it's a lot of existential questions. But ultimately, I myself, I tested 4. I have the Think Baby, and the Baby Bum. I also tested 2 sticks, the Blue Lizard one and the Vino one. And surprisingly, I wound up liking these for all very different reasons. So for the Baby Bum, I find that to be just the classic, really thick, very creamy, very robust kind of formula. I like this one more than the Think Baby because it sets a little faster. So you're not rubbing on your baby forever. They're like wiggling around. It's just annoying to track them down. So, and it is robust, but it does feel very thick and pretty bad. I went on a jog on the tracks with my husband. He's like, "Are you gonna look like that this whole time?" It doesn't look great. Yeah. And of the sticks, I actually wound up liking the Aveeno a lot more than the Blue Lizard. I polled you guys on which one you prefer. More people actually prefer the Blue Lizard. And the reason is the Blue Lizard stick, that formula, and I don't like it for the exact same reason why I like the Baby Bum, which is it sets pretty fast. But the problem with the stick is you're already kind of under applying. So like when you're streaking, and it basically sets like almost immediately after you wipe it. So when you're rubbing it in, it doesn't feel like I can trust it for even coverage because when you're using a stick, inevitably you're going to miss a couple of spots. And because it's already set, so you can't rub it to get it to like just even out a little bit. And when I checked it under the UV camera, you can definitely see streaks where I missed and whatnot. So to me, that wasn't a great match. And the Vino was very lighty, so I can at least like have a window of time to make sure that coverage is more complete. So that was my baby sunscreen rabbit hole.
The other thing that's so baffling is the texture is so draggy.
Yes.
I felt like these babies would not be able to go down slides.
Right.
They wouldn't move. Like
squeak.
So it's not fun. And I have, at this point, if anybody has a baby, they're mostly like covered. You're going to put a hat and clothing and whatnot. It's their feet, that stick out of the strollers that's where they get sun. And I try to apply it on my kid and she just doesn't love it. And I can see she's also like, this texture sucks. So it is what it is. You just do what you can and until they're older. I don't know.
Yeah. We'll report back with findings when they're older.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so on the subject of sticks, I tried the Beauty of Joseon one. I do think that texture is very good. Like it's very well formulated. As in, you can layer many, many layers and you will not look shiny. And
Mhm.
it glides on well, you know, but it's just unfortunate because the nature of a stick will never allow you to apply enough. And
Yeah.
when you actually do, it is way too much. Like, it doesn't absorb on skin because it's the third coat you have applied. I could probably scrape it off with my fingernail, like, I think it's just this format. I just don't know if it's feasible,
Mhm.
like, so I did want to mention, I just think that formula, they definitely did a good job. It's just a stick format is a problem.
I was gonna mention just a reminder for everyone that the reason why it's our least favorite, check our old blog post on it. But the reality is,
Yeah.
all SPF values, regardless of the type of formula it's in, is measured by weight to skin surface area, which means the way you naturally apply formula, the stick you're applying probably 1/10 of what's being used to measure that SPF value, and it's just not a format that's gonna promote wearing enough.
Yeah, for sure. And the other thing I will say, it's formats like the stick and the spray where the camera is very helpful because
Mhm.
it feels like I'm getting everywhere, but no, like I have not gotten like every crevice of like my face. So I did want to mention that. And the same thing for the spray, different spray pumps
Mhm.
have different diameters of, the density of the spray, the
Mhm.
width, the actual diameter and coverage of the spray all varies. And so that was one of the things we discovered with the vacation spray was that it's very targeted. It literally left like little circles on my face, and even though it also has a lot of alcohol, so when you're spritzing, it actually feels very fresh all around. Like, my face feels great. If I did not have the camera, I just don't think I would have actually gotten all like had full coverage. I feel like I would have been like, "Oh, I'm good," but you can even see where I like check the camera. I'm like, "Oh crap!" Like, I completely missed like this one side of my face. So I did want to like put that out there. That was like very interesting. Not all sprays are the same, guys. So
Last but not least, let's talk about international formulas we tested, which is probably usually our
mm.
favorite segment in this test. Last year, I think we basically only tested Asian formulas, and this year we did
Mm.
test a lot of Japanese formulas as well as K beauty formulas. But this year, we
Mm.
finally got our hands on, oh god, the La Roche-Posay. This is their
Hey.
European formula, the UV Moon 400. This is the one that I kind of make fun of their graphics department for. It's a it's a new
It's the
innovation.
one where the arrow goes like straight into the depths of skin.
Yeah, yeah. I think they're trying to depict that the longer wavelength UVAs penetrate deeper. Therefore, our current sunscreen technology is lacking. Therefore, you should try their new technology that covers all the way down to wavelength of 400. But the the graphic just make it look like our sunscreen filters penetrate right into skin, like chook.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. But this one I find that I don't have a lot to say because it's a really good sunscreen and it just like it
Mm.
kind of just checks off all the boxes very quickly. Obviously, I have
Mhm.
no way to actually test whether or not it protects you from the full range of UVA wavelength. But to me, this is one of those formulas that's just set super fast. It is probably the
Mm.
fastest setting formulas we've tested. This is faster than the Anthelio's US filter versions.
Mm.
Um, and it's layer friendly. So I tried because it's a fluid, it kind of dribbles. I glazed my three fingers very quickly and then just apply. And it actually set super fast. I think it only took me like less than 30 seconds to rub in and the film is
Mm.
set. And to me, that is such an important characteristic that will encourage you to apply enough because even with three fingers worth, like it took no time at all to set. The texture is also it's nothing fancy. It's honestly because it's nothing fancy that makes it so special. It's not drying, it's not nourishing, it's nothing. It's not lighter than air, it's not water break. It's just a sunscreen that goes on and then you forget that it's there, which is actually the best thing you can hope for in a
Mhm.
sunscreen. So yeah, for me this one really lived up to the hype and I was just really sad that it took like 3.5 weeks for it to get here. I probably got really upcharged. I was like, okay.
Yeah. Ah, one day.
One
Or
day.
Gloria and I will just go to Europe and buy it every year. I
I
don't know.
have not been to Europe since the pandemic, so We really should.
Yeah. I'm glad. I think I always like seeing what lives up to the hype and what doesn't.
Mhm.
And yeah, I think that one is definitely worthy because to be honest, the LRP mineral fluid is already a pretty like dry finish.
It is.
So it is pretty surprising that it could be even better. Like I think
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
yeah.
It's very clean and like, this works for me. So, yeah.
Yeah.
On the topic of international formulas, I do want to point out a kind of funny duo that I tested. That's the
Yeah.
Skin 104
It's a good
formula
one.
and the Round Lab formula. I like that they both
Mhm.
have their own like botanical claim. I think Skin 104 is like Madagascar, Centella, something Sika, something something. And then the Round Labs that we have birch juice. It's very moisturizing. These two are like virtually the same formulas. If you look at the fine prints, they are made by the same manufacturer. Now, as a chemist, we can tell you that even if you have the exact same ILs, you can produce very different formulas just based on actual precise ingredient ratios, how you process it. A lot of these things matter. Not really the case here. These two are practically identical. So my takeaway, I have two takeaways here. One is buy it when it's on sale, whichever one's cheaper. But I will say if you're someone that's a little casual about how much sunscreen you're using, I recommend getting the Round Lab one. That one comes in like a
Mm,
aluminum tube, where formula just kind of juts out. It's easy to over apply, which means you're probably applying the right amount.
interesting.
Whereas the
I like
Skin
that.
104 has a very nice little pump, but the pump means most people, if you don't, apply the three finger rule to your routine, might just do 1, 2 pumps. And it is a fresh, very spreadable formula. So I just feel like that's the type of packaging that will cause you to under apply.
Okay, so out of all the Asian ones we've tried a few now. Which ones? We haven't gone through. Actually, why don't we finish some of the Asians and then I do think we can talk about which Asian ones we like the best. We did try a couple like Asia versus US versions of some of the
Hmm.
sunscreens. For example, I actually tried the Aqua Rich US version, SPF
Hmm.
50. And I'm going to talk about that for 1 second because based on social media, many people seem to be lamenting about how, like, this is the formula we get in the US. It's very sad. And yes, Gloria and I are very sad. We're so limited. Da, 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 da. So I was like, okay, this must be absolute crap. And I tried it. And I gotta say, I am not mad at this formula
Hmm.
at all. I
Hmm.
think that I'm actually really surprised. So maybe I needed to hear the negative commentary for me to love this, set the bar really low. But I actually find it pretty comparable. It's
Hmm.
still got the same watery break. The Asia version still actually has a film on and when it dries, and this one does. It is heavier. It is more nourishing. That I definitely agree. But to be honest, like I was impressed that they could still capture aspects of the original Asia version. So I'm really not mad at it, and I actually think it's great that people can have this as an option. So I would probably rate this a lot higher than probably the other, skin influencers out there that rate this one. So yeah.
I agree. And I think it's partially because the bar is set so high. And I think the other
Yeah.
aspect of it is that you do go into it with a bit of a negative expectation
Mhm.
already. I will say to me, I actually did try it too. To me, the way people talked about it, I thought it's going to be a Neutrogena Hydro Boost, like the typical US sunscreen formula feel.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
ever question what do we mean by typical US filter feel, go try the Neutrogena Hydro Boost sunscreen. But the Aqua Reach one is honestly pretty good. So on the US side, you have the option of getting a SPF 30 or SPF 50. Honestly, to us, neither of them, the formula's not that doesn't feel that different. Try it out for yourself. Don't knock it till you try it.
Yeah.
I don't think it
Yeah.
deserves a bad. Honestly, we try so many garbage textures. This is not one of them.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it. And then finally, Gloria did a comparison of Anessa and Shiseido.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, the very popular line of sunscreen in Asia, Anessa, is owned by Shiseido. That's why I tested those two to compare. I will say, last year we did a lot of like Japanese sunscreens. They have a claim that's not super kosher in the state called rub resistant, and a lot of the
Mhm.
Japanese sunscreens will claim that. And they took a bunch of them to like boxing, jogging, whatever that works. And they are very impressive in those claims. Like from the clothing line and just after you sweat, wiping your face, the obviously not very rigorously, but the sunscreen film held up really well despite the torture test. And
Yeah.
the Anessa I tested last year is the gold bottle one. I also tested Biore's Athleism. This year I tested Anessa the pink bottle, that's for sensitive skin. And they all held up really, really well. I actually like the Anessa pink bottle the most because one of the hallmarks in these Japanese-based sport sunscreen that's all rub resistant, this resistant, everything resistant is it's pretty drying because they have a decent amount of powders
Mm.
in it. But this
Mm.
Anessa one, the pink bottle one, isn't super drying on me. The Shiseido one didn't hold up, and this is one of the examples where I verbally say it, but based on the video quality, I realized that it's kind of hard for you guys to see what I saw. But one of the biggest
Mm.
things I saw was after sweating, when you wipe your face, you can just see part of the sunscreen film go with you. Again, that doesn't mean that the protection is not there anymore, but the evenness of the film might be in
Yeah.
question, and the sweat is 100% interacting with the film. So to me, that one, as far as a US formula goes, it's a pretty good texture. It's pretty comfortable, but it's marketed to be water resistant. I personally wouldn't take it for anything super rigorous.
Yeah. And just remember, guys, like in the US, especially, like you really can't claim sweat resistance, only water resistance. And that's really tough because when water interacts on the surface over the surface of film versus underneath the film, you can have two very different scenarios. So this is why Gloria and I feel the need to like basically go and do these workouts so that it can kind of give a more cohesive picture of just exactly how water resistance is it. Again, everybody sweats differently, and there's a lot of human error in that, but it does give a little bit of a picture on that. But yeah. So after testing all the Asian ones, I think Laura and I we should talk about which ones are our favorites.
Ooh. Hmm. Okay,
You know,
I'll go first.
Go. I'll let you go first.
I do find myself so to me, favorite. If you ask me, right off the bat, I might give you a list. But thinking about it, I'm like, you know what? The ones that I'll reach for again after testing it probably definitely warrant a shout out because a lot of these, obviously, the ones that we don't like, I will never reach for again. And then there are ones that I think is objectively has redeeming qualities or good qualities that someone's looking for, but I myself wouldn't reach for again. But the ones that I find myself post test continue to reach for is definitely the UV Mu. I've been using this one a lot, especially when I
Mhm.
feel like the UV index is off the charts. I will definitely reach for this one. Um, I also
So the EU
really
one, that's for EU, but for Asia.
for Asia, I will say the Bureau is still my favorite. I
Mhm.
last year this is a seasonality thing. I used to really like Anessa's texture, and I still do. I still use it, but recently I've been more into textures that set, whereas the Anessa texture is one of those more silicone ones that's a little glidier. So I
Mm,
just find myself
yeah.
not preferring that as much.
Yeah, no, I think I agree. And I think that's why I still really like last year's Neogen. I think
That one's really
partially
good.
because, yeah, and I think there's something about these thinner fluids where they just, aside from the, La Roche Posay's, that there's just that slip. I don't know how to
Mhm.
explain it. It's on the skin. And
Yeah.
that might be why, but some of these like thicker gels that inevitably when they do dry down, it's a little bit cleaner. I think just that's just the nature of it. I just tend to gravitate towards those. So yeah, I think that's a pretty solid summary of all the ones we tried. We will kind of discuss more about you know just the overall test, maybe thoughts on how we might do things differently next year, and general takeaways. But we should really take a break. I
Yeah.
think Laura and I need a break.
Yes, please. All right, we are taking a break with Animal Fun Fact Corner, and this week is my
Woohoo!
turn. When I was doing my research, I was like, Victoria's theme this year is owls and bird things. And what is my theme this year? And I've decided it is the weird tongues. I brought you guys
Yeah. Yeah.
the woodpecker tongues, honeybees. Not honeybees. What am I talking about? Oh my god.
Honeybees.
Oh, hummingbirds. Wow. Wow, mom brain is real. And the hummingbirds. And this brings me to question where other animals tuck their tongues. I'm sure that's everyone's natural reaction and question.
Tuck their tongues is not really the phrase I thought I would hear today. Go ahead.
Yes, so today I present the pangolins. These are
Hey.
the shelled anteaters, essentially, that's found over South Asia and Southeast Asia. There are some species in Africa as well. They
Are they
are.
like a Pokemon? This is really random.
Oh
But I
yes,
swear to
yes, yes,
God
they're
it.
Pokemon. Google doesn't know what I want. Yes. Oh, Sandshrew. I think
Sandshrew. There you go.
yeah, Sandshrew is 100% inspired by pangolins, but not with the tongue thing. But anyway, these animals they are nocturnal and they eat a lot of insects. I realize I have a typo that they eat ants with AUNTS instead of just ANT. That's so
No,
dumb.
not the aunties.
Anyway, they eat ants and
funny.
they eat termites. So basically, they go out foraging for insects that burrow and hide in decaying wood, which means they need really long tongues to reach in those crevices and find the insects to
Mm.
pull them in. So the tongue can be as long as their whole body length and change. Then the question is, where does it all go?
No
um,
kidding.
this time, it's not around the brain. This time, it's all the way down at the base of their ribs. Around, yeah, so it goes all the way in their chest cavity and hooks on the diaphragm at the base of their rib cage. So yeah, when the
It's
pangolin eats, it
lovely.
literally goes, what? Yeah, so to me, I don't know if this will become a theme. I don't know if next week I'm gonna bring another weird animal tongue fact for Victoria, but I was like, these questions I never thought I would want answers to. But yes, the pangolin tongue.
I think we're starting to venture into a new realm of animal facts. Before we did the assholes, and
Mhm,
then before that was the beauty pageants.
mhm.
Now I think we're getting into like animal biology because,
Weird.
and I think we're starting to venture into a realm that people are like, please, I do not care. They're
Yep.
like, this is not the kind of knowledge I wanted.
But in case you do, here it is. Fun trivia fact
There
for
you
you.
go.
Just
Yeah, a great icebreaker for you guys.
but I have to end on kind of a sad note. These species are one of the
No,
most trafficked animals in the world because there are
no.
some traditional Chinese medicine, traditional Vietnamese medicine believes that the shell has medicinal properties, even though kind of like rhino horns, they're practically the same as your nails.
Mm.
So if you know of someone that believes they have curative benefits, just tell them to eat their own toenail. Literally, do that instead of poor little animals. And that's it. That's the weirdness corner.
I
Hey.
gotta say though, it's awesome because I do find these creatures to just visually look so amazing. They're
Hmm.
just, they just are awesome. So it's very sad to know.
Yeah.
Yay, the pangolin! And their unnaturally long tongues. Very cool.
All right, let's
All
wrap
right.
this up. This has been a pretty long episode.
Yeah, our bad guys. We clearly had a lot of feels, way more feels than I think I thought I would have had.
Oh yeah, I know.
And I think it's funny because like Gloria and I, after doing that last year, we were like, oh, that was fun. We don't have to do this again. And then we this year are like, we should do this again. And we're like, that's it. We'll do it after this. But I kind of feel like this might happen next year again.
Probably.
Just because it seems to be, first of all, there will always be another sunscreen.
Hmm.
And Gloria and I apparently still have a lot of feels. So, yeah, we'll definitely be monitoring this category next year. I guess, Gloria, my question to you is, if we did do it again next year, is there anything you would want to do differently?
mm, I think for me, wow, I had a good one and I totally just. I think to me, I would want to. The thing is, like, we get a lot of requests to do a lot of sunscreens, and I totally get it, right? And this challenge is originally named 30 for 30 sunscreens. But next year, ideally, I kind of actually want to take some of the top performers across a couple different scenarios. We've been very whimsical this
Mm.
year and last year, like the ones that's waterproof or water resistant will take on torture tests. But honestly, what we do with these sunscreen is very casual, very dependent on what we do on that day. But for me,
Yeah.
sometimes I'm curious, like, oh, okay, like, does this wear sustain through eating a giant greasy ass burger? Or if it does well for sweat, is it good for swimming? Things like that. But
Yeah.
obviously, if we're doing 30 sunscreens, we're not going to take them onto 8 different scenarios. So maybe that's something that
Yeah.
I might muse about doing next year with some of my favorites.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point is, at the end of the day, it's our job to make things feel more objective and measurable and more comparable. And I think that's generally hard to do aside from, the initial textures and how they kind of set. And at this point, I think people listening to us already have a sense of that. I think
Yeah.
like they can take our experiences and when they go apply, they can also figure it out themselves. So what is that next level to kind of like help, compare when there are so many. So I really like that. For me, I think I almost feel like I need to start like categorizing better because like
Mm,
you do 30, right? But like I gotta be honest, some days, tinteds make sense and I've got to do a water resistant. And today I had to cram in my last Soul Cycle water resistant study for Sunbum. It's like I just feel like it's really hard for me to go from, a tinted to a stick to a water resistant like back to back. And
right.
I think I would want to be a little bit more organized and like, okay, I've got these 6. If I'm gonna do all the tinteds, do them all at the same time, do all the Asian ones at the same time so that everything really is a lot more, it's fresh on my mind, it's easier to compare. So I think that would probably be my goal. And maybe something that Gloria and I would do is like, I also think price tier now should be factored in.
Yeah.
Because I'm looking at some of these like drugstore ones that are much cheaper. And I'm like, it's not fair to have them try to compete with, these Sephora $60 sunscreens. It's just, they're 2 different tiers. It's not practical. A lot of the ones in drugstore are actually meant for face and body, which is a completely different texture. So that's I think where my head's at, but who knows as we continue to muse like what we'll do for next year.
Actually, I
Yeah.
kind of like that. Like the do a challenge to find the best sunscreen under $20 or something.
Yeah,
Which I feel like
exactly.
years ago it would have been like under 10, but now I feel like it's not realistic to have under 10 as the criteria.
Yeah, I know. And honestly, like this year we didn't test really any of the Neutrogenas and they have so many and they've
Mhm.
done so many clinical studies. So I think there's actually a lot of categories. I just think a lot of people are like, "Oh, but it's what is that one? It's copper tone." Like
Yeah.
no one's like interested, but I think there are actually a couple good textures in that category that probably will be worth a shout out. So,
I like that, and I do think that, like, this was something the price point thing was something that we talked about basically after we started, we're like, "Can you" once we planned it, we're just scoping out the ones we're gonna test, and us were picking out these sunscreen, we're like, "Holy crap, what happened to sunscreen pricing?" And
yes.
at the end of the day, like Victoria always mentioned that, you know, there's, the texture is king to help you wanna apply more. Price point is starting to come into play because are you really
Yeah.
mentally prepared to just squeeze out, like, rolls and rolls of your $60 sunscreen to
Yeah.
slather over your face? Like, eh.
Yeah. And it's really tough because, to buy an Asian sunscreen on Stalvana is like significantly cheaper than probably a good 40% of the sunscreens we tested.
Yeah, it's true.
So it's like, it's really hard when, you know, Gloria and I really feel for, archaic FDA regulations around sunscreen and the limitations there are on being able to formulate in the US. And also, honestly, trying to just get good protection and be willing to apply it every day. So, all in all, yeah, I don't know, Gloria, you have any top tips that you feel like people should be reminded of as you did the study?
I think a good reminder I have is definitely regardless of product type you go for, it's still more is more. There are very few sunscreens I tested that I didn't feel like, what's the best way to describe it? as I'm applying it, I just know that this is more than what most people will naturally put on. And that applies to almost 90% of the sunscreens I tested. So
Yeah.
definitely more is more. And for me, I do want to remind everyone again that pilling is a bit of a personal thing. It's what makes something pill. There's some predictive things, but at the end of the day, it's very much dependent on your skin type and the formula. If a formula
Yeah.
pills on you, it doesn't matter how many people rave about it. It's not a good sign for you personally. So I would say just definitely keep an eye out for that.
And I think for me this year, I have never paid more attention to a nozzle size.
Oh,
It's just such a
yeah.
weird, like, never. I feel like this
There's so
is
many
the
needle-sized nozzles nowadays.
yeah, and I think I cannot emphasize enough how much it will impact how much you apply. Like,
Yeah.
you know, these, especially these, like the Tatcha and the Kate Somerville, these probably need 4 fingers worth. Like, I'm almost certain. Yeah, I didn't weigh it, but I just feel that it's so little and it's such a thin fluid that, yeah, that's a reminder for everybody out there. Just pay attention to that. It will actually give you a good idea of like how many fingers you should actually be applying. So, but other than that, yeah, I hope everyone really liked this series. We learned a lot.
Yeah,
Still.
and I think like sometimes before we kicked it off, Victoria and I talked about doing this, and we kind of struggle with it because at the end of the day, it is a very opinionated, right? There's a lot of what we personally like in a formula baked into it. We try to explain it based on our preference and our skin type to hopefully help you guys out in terms of finding what works for you guys. But sometimes we feel a little weird that these are just opinions. So let us know what you think of the segment, what could be more helpful for you guys. And yeah.
Yeah, so thank you guys so much for just being on this sunscreen journey with us. Gloria and I are pretty tired of sunscreens, but we're deep into summer, so we got to continue that use. We will be releasing the final summary on our website of all the ratings and our opinions on it probably in a week from when this episode launches, because we are just wrapping up the release of the last few videos. But all in all, yeah, it's been fun, guys. We hope it's been enjoyable for you guys to watch us apply and continue to apply sunscreen for 30 days. Yeah, so all right, guys. Gloria, where can they find us?
You can find us on our website at chemistconfessions.com. You can write to us at info@chemistconfessions.com. If you have any questions, you can also DM us on Instagram at chemist.confessions. We're also on TikTok under the same handle, but please don't DM us there. And we will see you guys all next week.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.